This is what I know to be true so far, the show that inspires you to awaken the magic within and step into your most authentic life. I'm Kerry McKenzie, a multi-passionate spiritual mentor, magic maker, nature energy alchemist, and creator of the Rebellion of Love. If you're ready to experience self-liberation and create a life entirely on your terms, this is the show for you. I'm so grateful to have you with me on this journey to awakening the magic within with what I know to be true so far. Welcome, beautiful souls, to another episode of What I Know to Be True So Far. Today, we're joined by a woman who has been blazing trails for decades, leading from a place of power, purpose, and deep feminine wisdom. Megan Dalla-Camina is a globally celebrated leader in the women's empowerment space, an award-winning founder, CEO, best-selling author, and one of the most refreshing voices on leadership, well-being, and gender equality that I've ever come across. We are exploring so many amazing topics: the patriarchy, how to talk about the patriarchy, the unrealistic expectations we put on ourselves as women, how stepping into our feminine energy and our feminine embodiment can actually help shift our lives and our businesses for the better. Everything that Megan said resonated so much with me, especially at the stage I am in my life. It also really gave me so many key insights into the work around the inner critic, which I love working with. It was such an incredible conversation to have with Megan, and I know that you're going to get so much value out of everything we talk about on the show today. Settle in and let's rise with the incredible, amazing Megan Dalla-Camina. Hello and welcome to the show, Megan. I am so grateful and so honored that I have this opportunity. I absolutely love all of the work that you're doing in the world. I was just saying before that I've been stalking you on Instagram, but I've been reading your book while I've been watching my son run around and kick a football. And I've just loved learning more about this, in particularly because this subject is a tender one for me. We're going to talk about the P word today. And I guess that's kind of where I'd like to start off with. Is maybe if you want to share with my audience a little bit about you and your story and how you fell into that moment of really questioning this word that we all know so well now, patriarchy.
Oh, the P word. Well, let's start with the small thing then, shall we? Thank you for having me on. I'm so excited to chat with you and see which tangents we can run around. Oh, patriarchy. So my background, sort of three parts. I grew up as an actress and a creative. I was a dancer, I was a singer, I was in bands, I was on the stage, I was doing all of that creative stuff. Thought I was going to be doing nothing but be a movie star, move to the US and marry Charlie Sheen. That was my dream and my goal when I was growing up. Thank goodness that didn't happen. So that was really the first third, not really third because I'm not that old, but the first sort of stage of my life, fueled by creativity. And then in a complete juxtaposition, I ended up in corporate America, working out of Australia, in Asia, in the US, in some of the biggest companies in the world. I worked for GE under Jack Welch. I worked for PwC, and then spent a large part of the last part of my career at IBM. So big tech, big professional services, big, masculine, male-dominated organizations. And I was in marketing, and then I ended up as head of strategy at IBM. So that was a massive part. And then the last 12 years, I've been running my own businesses, under, Megan Dalla-Camina as an author and Women Rising as a founder and CEO of a women's education and empowerment company. So very mixed. And then certain pieces throughout that journey that really defined my journey. I got really sick when I was 21, had chronic fatigue long before they knew what chronic fatigue was. I was in bed for 6 months, like really ill. They could not work it out. They eventually figured it out. Oh, there's this new thing called chronic fatigue. And that was like my first burnout experience at 21, which is way too young, right, to have a burnout, but not uncommon amongst women. And then at 24, I had a car accident that wasn't a really bad car accident, but hurt my back. So again, I had another 6 months sort of doing back rehab and lots of different things. And then that's when I landed up in a corporate admin job that turned very quickly into my marketing profession. In terms of patriarchy, spending so long in the system sounds like jail, right? In so many cases, it is
Hell sometimes.
feels like hell sometimes. I mean, I loved my corporate career until I didn't. But I didn't realize I was the fish in the water I didn't understand, which is what I see for so many women. I didn't understand that I was living and working in a system that was never designed for me to succeed in. And so the pushing and striving and driving and pushing and driving and striving to be successful, to fit in, to fit the mold, to, I became a leader very young, to be the model of the leader that I saw, which was what? White, male, masculine. I didn't realize until so far into that journey the cost, the numerous costs, I should say, that working inside patriarchy had on me, until I had a major burnout when I was 36. And I literally walked into my CEO's office and I said, I'm done. I literally can't do this for one more second. Now, I would go on to spend another 7 years in corporate, but doing it very differently, and then being on this path of starting what I call the unraveling of the patriarchy, leadership, masculine domination, losing our feminine selves within all of that, and charting the next course to what would become my purposeful path around the work that I now do.
Amazing. It sounds like you had like this incredible journey. To me, I'm like thinking if I had to live that, because I didn't last very long in the corporate world. I mean, long enough, but I was always scared of stepping into anything bigger, any promotions, anything, because it always felt a little bit to me like I wouldn't be able to handle it. So hats off to you for being such an incredible woman who was able to handle all of those responsibilities. It sounds massive. One of the things that stands out for me when I think of the word patriarchy in the workplace, and also just in general, is how offended some people get by using that word. Like, why do you think that is? Like, if we know it's something that's still so prevalent in today, and it's something that we need to bring to the attention of, so many people, and including men, to create allies, why do you think everyone gets so funny about it?
I write about in Women Rising the first time that I said the word patriarchy in a corporate. And I mean, this is 20 years ago now, the first time that I said that. And I didn't even really know what I was saying. I didn't understand what I meant when I said we need to address patriarchy so that we can, get to gender equality. But I knew enough that that's what it was. And I knew enough by the way that nobody would meet my eyes. Everybody was like, the energy of the room completely shifted. I knew, number one, that I was onto something. And number two, that this was the problem and the discomfort. I think the discomfort comes from a number of things. I think it comes from the fact that a lot of people don't really understand what we're talking about when we talk about patriarchy. So people get offended. Men get offended because they think you're blaming me. So you're a militant feminist, and you are saying, because we need to address patriarchy and the systemic issues that impact women and also impact men, by the way, that it's my fault. That you're saying it's my fault, so I'm wrong. So therefore, my back is going to go straight up and I'm going to dismiss everything that you are saying. And women, for so many of us as women, we have internalized the patriarchy in ways that we don't even understand. So when a lot of women hear that word, they're like, but I'm indoctrinated. Again, I'm the fish in the water. So when you say that, my back gets up because, number one, I don't really know what you're talking about, but I know that it feels really uncomfortable in my body. And that's that feminine wisdom where we know something's off, but we haven't quite done that work to work out what it is. And everything in between. There are so many layers of this. Interestingly, when I talk to the men that do our Women Rising Male Allies program, For sure, some of them get offended. I talk about the hard words. I talk about patriarchy. I talk about privilege, and I talk about power. And you would talk about P's, right? 3 P's. But a lot of men are also very open to this conversation now.
Yeah.
Because of the stage that we're at. And I find great hope and optimism beside that. There's still probably more resistance than there is leading into it. But I've definitely seen a shift. We need that shift to come within us as women as well, and that internalized patriarch.
Yes. Okay. So maybe there's something you can help me with then, because patriarchy, when I hear that word or when I think about it, and I think maybe because I spent so much of my life trying to be a dude. Like I just spent so much of my time and energy trying to fit in with the boys and be one of the boys. And I mean, like going back to my teen years, like I wanted to fit in with the boys. Then I went through my own journey of, I guess, awakening, and it just gave me so much rage. And then I had so much rage. And I've done a lot of work on healing that part of my journey. But now when I try to discuss something with someone who's a little bit closed-minded or unaware, I find the rage likes to come out. And that's not helpful for any of us to have these open conversations, for me to come at it with this element of like frustration and rage. What tips do you have for someone like me who wants to have these kind of conversations, but wants to be, inclusive in the conversation, to not make men feel like they are being attacked, or to not make someone feel like, oh, well, you just don't know, or something like that? Like, what can we do to delicately dance with this conversation?
The delicate dance. I love that. I'm really curious, when you feel the rage coming, like what triggers it for you?
It's generally not being acknowledged. So if I'm trying to explain something, like it's not okay to say those sorts of things to me. And I'm saying this about my partner, who I consider an ally, but sometimes he will say certain comments about me or about someone. And it's just, he's a comedian. So like we just put the brand of like, it's just a joke on everything. And I have zero tolerance for it.
Yeah.
And so I will say something if I feel like there's a line that's been crossed, right? And generally when I say that and it's met with something that's not instant acknowledgement, and my partner is super validating, but sometimes he just is a little bit dismissive around this particular subject. And I will find the moment that I feel like I'm not being seen and heard, that's when the rage comes up. And I feel it in behind me, like there is a scatter of 1,000 women standing behind me as the rage comes up.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not even pretty well.
It's because there is, right? Like, because there is. And that's the feminine wound. Right? And that's why I asked the question, because it taps into something really deeply primal. And we do have lineages and lineages and lineages of women standing behind us, all around us, in fact. And you're a warrior. So when you feel that, and when you're speaking your truth, especially with someone who is so close to you, and it's something that is so important to you, and you don't get validated for that, it can feel like, well, not only are you devalidating me, but you're devalidating these millions and millions of women. And it taps into that very primal place where we are wounded in our feminine. And particularly when you shared that you grew up and wanted to fit in with the guys, I so relate to that, because that was me as well. Even though I grew up as a dancer, I was with the boys in the band, and I always hung out with the boys, and I had problematic friendships with girls, and that carried all the way through, until I tapped into my feminine self. So here's my tip. Get curious. Right? Because when we feel that rage, and we don't want to shut down our rage, It's part of feminine power. We think feminine power is like soft and pretty and, twinkly lights. Feminine power is both, right? Like feminine power is Lakshmi,
Yeah.
the goddess of abundance, but it's Kali,
Yeah.
right? I'm going to burn it all down. And it feels like there's a lot of Kali. You know what I mean when I say that, right?
Yeah.
You've got a lot of Kali energy and that rage. And we need that to create change. And there's a time and a place for that. And at the same time, there's a time and a place for curiosity and seeking to understand. Oh, tell me more about why you've just dismissed that, or tell me more about why you think that. And then let me share with you how I receive that.
Yeah.
In those moments when you want to create understanding. Sometimes you might just walk away and go like, this is not like fight the fight. We can't fight all the fights.
And I need to get better at walking away, maybe, Megan. I mean, that's a skill I need to do.
It is a skill. It is a skill. And I think it comes with, certainly for me, the deeper my spiritual practice, the less reactive I have become and am. And the more distance I can get between this just happened, and whereas before I would have gone in, I can sit back. And we can choose to cultivate that with intention. And there's great power in that for us as women to be able to hold our space without, throwing all of that energy out, especially in a void where it's not going to be received. So it's all of those things. Like it is the dance. It is the dance. When has he said something that is just because he's a comedian and it's flippant and it's for a laugh?
Yeah. And
when is something that it has actually wounded you because you haven't been acknowledged? And that discernment is part of the experience and the dance as well.
I think even explaining that to him like that would be so helpful because he's such a caring, incredibly emotionally intelligent human being, and he's just the most fantastic man. And I find that I'm pretty good. I would say I have a lot of self-control over my own emotions or awareness when it's set for the week before my period. Man, I feel like it's reduced so low, and I feel like I'm all fire. Yeah, one small thing, and I remind myself, I'm like, dude, you're in your luteal, like just chill, it's fine. But there is something around this subject in particular, that week before my period, that I find it very hard to have that. I would say like more of that reserved, controlled awareness of the circumstance, and it's more reactive, definitely in that week. Yeah,
and that is our understanding of ourselves as women. Where am I at in my cycle? And what does that mean for me? What do I need in these times? What do I need to avoid in these times? How do I honor myself, my rhythms and my seasons and my cycles?
Yeah. Amazing. And so that leads me on to like another thought, a string of thoughts actually, because I have a rule with myself, don't make any giant business decisions the week before your period, because I will self-sabotage in that week in the blink of an eye. Like if I give myself the permission to, I will pivot and I will do random things in that week. What can we do? Or even like in the workplace, like where do you see the shift in working with our cycle and working with our cycle through business and honoring our femininity in that aspect, the very physical, hormonal aspects? And is there a place where that's recognized in the workplace?
Yeah, look, I think we're a long way from that. I think we've come a long way. I mean, the fact that we talk about perimenopause and menopause so openly now, only in the last 18 months is such a massive leap forward. The fact that some companies have period leave, menstruation leave for women is like unheard of, right? In patriarchal systems and structures. So we have come so far, which is all hugely positive. I think the real work, though, has to happen for us as women. The number of women who are completely unaware of what happens for them, whatever season they're in of their life. They may be postmenopausal, right? But women still have cycles, or whether they're, just had their first baby, and like, what does that mean for, for my cycles in the season that I'm in? Part of tapping into and awakening our feminine wisdom is really listening and understanding. And whether that's the cycles of the moon, our cycles, how we feel at certain times, that tapping into our energy, all of that is part of what lies within us. And when we can chart and understand, then we have more agency. We have more power and control over when and how we're going to show up. Now, that doesn't, if you work for somebody else, take that with a grain of salt, right? Because, there's some things you'll be able to control and some things that you can't. When we're in our own businesses and we do have control, then we, number one, like you said, like I know in this week, no decisions, right? Don't change anything. It's like, don't make a decision after you've had a bad day in your business. Wait till tomorrow. So that's self-understanding, self-awareness, self-awakening, acknowledgement, and then giving ourselves permission to follow that guidance that we've just charted for ourselves. Because I often find with us as women, so often we wait for permission from other people. We don't give it to ourselves. So let this be the conversation that is the giant permission slip to, get to understand yourself, chart how it's going to best work for you, and then give yourself permission.
Yeah. And that's so hard, Megan, because I feel like sometimes the narrative that we're fed, especially when you come from corporate, is that you have a to-do list no matter what. Like there's no taking a break from that to-do list. And what I've found to be helpful with my little Trello board that helps support me throughout the month is that I know when it's a week before my period, I'll have juicy conversations. I will be very creative. I'm very passionate. So I do all of that kind of stuff. I don't do any business decision making in the bigger picture. But what does happen is that tiny little voice that keeps telling me in the background that I should be doing, I should be that, blah, blah, blah. Where does that come from? I know you talk a bit about this in the book, but where does it come from and how can we start to address that when it's popping up for us? Or even how do we recondition our subconscious mind to the permission slip, yes. And then every time that little voice pops in, how do we release that and come back into, I know my truest, deepest knowing, and I'm going to follow that as my guide?
Yes. You're speaking my language. So this is what I write about so much, right? As you know, in Women Rising, the first part of the book is all about patriarchy and power and what I call the paradoxes of power, which is how, the system in which we live and operate as women, but that we're so often blind to, like the empowerment paradox. We expect women to be empowered, but in systems that actively disempower us.
Yes.
The confidence paradox, where we tell women we want you to be confident, but don't be too confident because we're going to cut you down if you are. Or the leadership paradox, be a leader, but don't lead like that. Like lead how it's always been done. So, really understanding that and how we internalize that and how that internalized patriarchy, as we spoke about before, and all of those shoulds, I write about the shoulds and the musts and the have tos and how they run our lives. All of that becomes our inner critic. All of that gets internalized and becomes this inner voice in our head telling us, driving us all of the time. That drive and strive and drive and strive and drive and strive. And so the reason I did the second part of the book around the inner critic and the inner critic archetypes is so that we can get very familiar and friendly with that voice inside our heads and the stories that we tell ourselves, about our lives, and the meaning that we make from that. And when we can do that, yes, we are detaching from that external conditioning and we are rewiring ourselves, our stories, our thoughts, our nervous systems for how we want to show up in the world, for that reconnection to the feminine, the balancing with the masculine, and deprogramming what we have been taught. That
Mm.
just doesn't work for us, for most of us as women.
Yeah, I love this so much. And for anyone who's listening who does read the book, mine are the imposter, the outsider, and the self-doubter were the archetypes that I resonated with the most, which was, I mean, there were, I think, a little bit of every one of them, to be honest,
Yeah.
in some degree. But in particular, these three where I was like 100%, that's me over and over and over. I have this tool that I use with my ego when it comes to fear or anything that's just like uncomfortable or anything that is like expanding us. I imagine my ego is like this old grumpy dude called Frank, and he wears a cardigan and like he's in this dark and dingy room. I don't know why. This is just how it came to be the first time I practiced this 10 years ago. And when he's freaking out or he's being a total jerk, I will like visualize that I go there with Frank and I bring him a cup of tea and I'm like, hey, Frank, why don't you just take a seat? We're gonna like sit down together and we're gonna do this anyway. And I talk him through like being okay. And now I'm thinking maybe I need to create some identities for the imposter, outsider, and the self-doubter so that when those voices even come up, I could even visualize sitting them down and having like a it's okay conversation. What would be the most supportive words that I could say to those types of the three archetypes that I have?
Oh, so fascinating, Frank. Isn't it
Yes.
so interesting that so often it's a man?
Old and white and grumpy.
Again.
Love it.
That's so interesting. We could just do a whole episode just on pulling that apart. So what we first want to do is really understand the stories and try and, what I do in the book is like, what does this archetype look like? Where does this come from generally for women? This is what it looks like and sounds like. The light side and the shadow side, because all of our inner critics have positive aspects. They're not all bad. So there's the light side and the shadow side. And what are the stories? And then how do we manage it, right? So as you know, that's the sort of structure we go through, and there's affirmation, in there as well, because it's just a really easy way to cut through the crap of what we're doing before we do the inner work. So for each of them, and yes, like if you gave them an identity, if that works for you, by all means. I mean, all of us have like a boardroom table with all of our personalities that sit around that boardroom. Right. So I've got the rebel over here and the driver over here and So that's a really good way as well. Like who's sitting around your boardroom table or around your lounge room or your women's circle or whatever, whatever it is, because they all have a place. And with our inner critic, we're not trying to fight it. We're not trying to silence it. We're not trying to just say you have no place here. We're trying to listen and understand so that we can tame. We're not silencing, we're taming, we're quieting it down. So, that step around, what are the stories that I'm telling myself? Like with the imposter. When I feel like an imposter, such a common one, right? For so many women. What stories am I telling myself? When does it get triggered? In the book, in the confidence chapter, I write about sort of situational confidence, comparative confidence, and some others. So seasonal confidence. When does this voice of the imposter flare up? What does it say? And the clearer we can get on those things, then we can start pulling in the strategies of, that I write about around, okay, I see you, I hear you. That really simple 3-step process that I teach around catch the story.
Yeah.
And then we have to interrupt the story. We have to interrupt this cognitive dissonance that's going on in our psyche. And the simplest way I've ever found to do that is just asking the question, is that true? Is that true that I don't belong here? Is that true that I haven't earned my place at this table? Is that true that my business is going to fail if I don't do 5 more hours when I'm exhausted? Is that true? And then we get to the truth of the situation. Then we can get to the reframe, which is, yeah, I'm exhausted today. I'm in this part of my cycle where I need rest. And I'm going to go lie on the couch and watch Netflix. Or I'm going to go and have a bath. I'm going to sit under a tree. I'm going to do the thing that my body's telling me I need to do.
I love that so much. And even when you were talking about the reframe there, because I think originally when I started any reframing, I was doing Byron Katie's work, which is, it really does make us look at, you know, what if I chose for it not to be true? Like, what does that then lead me to? What thought processes? So for me, it definitely comes up whenever someone pays me a compliment. And I've been working on this for a really long time, but the instant rejection, especially around imposter, is generally when someone tells me that I've done amazing work. And I'll have like a session. Even yesterday, I had a session with someone and he left the studio and he was saying to me, like, that was the most amazing experience. And I could feel it almost like a layer behind me rejecting it. And I really had to like, don't close that, just receive. And like really open to that. Like some of the things that go through my mind is like, you haven't worked hard enough to be getting this kind of praise, which is wild because I've been studying for 10 years in my field of energetics and energy therapy and all of the work that I do. But even after 10 years of study, it still keeps coming up, but it generally comes up when I'm getting positive feedback. And when I get the negative feedback, not so much, I can sort of go, no, that's not true. I've done a lot of work here. But when it's positive feedback, that's when I struggle the most.
Isn't that interesting as well? Like I'm thinking back to your comments around when you're growing up, you just want to be one of the guys. And receiving a compliment is receiving. It's deeply feminine energy. So I don't know if there's something in there for you to sort of think about and sit with around how do you become more open to receiving positive and owning that. And something I tell a lot of corporate women is when and it's irrelevant for all women, but when you receive a compliment, to train yourself to just say thank you. You can analyze it later if you want to, and you can go through and do the story work and what came up for me when this happened, all the rest of it. But just in the moment, smile and say thank you. It's really fine. Thank you. I'm now at the point where I say thank you, I receive that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I really receive and feel that, but that's taken decades, right, to get to that place.
Yeah.
So I would, I feel like there's something in there about that feminine receptivity.
Yes, I agree.
And that you are safe to receive.
Yeah, totally. It's safety. It's definitely related to safety. Yeah.
And that there's a softening that happens.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's also an ownership of your achievements, because if I'm going to receive a compliment from you, then there's something that goes on in my narrative that says, oh, well, I must think I deserve this. Right? And so many women have the story that I'm not smart enough and I'm not good enough. So therefore there's that dissonance again, that disconnect.
Yeah. There's so much that's coming up in my mind, specifically around how I do what I do, because it's just everyone who has worked with me is like, you're magic. Oh, you're just magic. And most of the time I'm like, yeah, I don't actually even know how I make it happen and how I'm able to do what I do. It is just some magical thing. And then I feel like I've cheated in some way, like I've cheated somehow to make this, like I've skipped the steps of working really hard to do this. And I'm supposed to work really hard because that's the narrative that I guess that I've held on to as well, is that I've been working since I was 13 years old and my whole family are all hard workers. And when something's so super easy for me, like energetic work, and it feels so natural and I feel so connected and it's all just this channeled magic. And I'm like, I don't really know the effort that's required because I'm not using any effort to make this beautiful transmission or this thing to change within you. It's just this magical thing. And then there's that part of me is like, you haven't worked really hard, but I mean, really, I have worked very hard to hone my craft, but there's still that kind of story. I know that there's a lot of women out there who deal with the same struggle. Is there something that you can, address in our lives where we can start to recondition ourselves that part of being a female and the work that we're able to do in the world is part magic. It is intuitive. It is the spiritual side of it. And can we really let go of this working hard so that that then goes behind us so that we can move forward? Can you speak to the women who haven't quite stepped into, including myself really, owning your full spectrum of magic as a female and how we can do that more and not have to work so hard for all the amazing magical things?
So juicy. And there's so much in there. So we are in a very masculine dominated society environment, hustle culture, bro culture. It has to be hard. If you're not hustling, if you're not working, we wear our business like a badge of honor. How many hours can I go? And da 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 da. This is what we live in, right? And we are in the world of social media, so it's everywhere. And all of those entrepreneurs out there saying, if you don't, you got to work 24 hours a day and da da da. If you're not grinding, it's never going to happen. All of this. This is the world that we live in, and it's very masculine. So our work is, first of all, and the feminine is so devalued. It has been for centuries, and it still is today. There is this feminine rising without question, but it's not rising in all women, and it's not rising in the collective yet. So for us to, first of all, acknowledge the feminine, respect and revere the feminine, and then start to own that and embody that as something that is true for me in this female body that I am in. We all have feminine energy irrespective of gender. But for women, it's a deep, integral part of who we are. But and for anyone who really wants to go into this, go read The Heroine's Journey by Maureen Murdoch. It really goes deeply into, this Jungian journey of how we disassociate from the feminine. And then at the end, we come back, right? It's the antidote to the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell. So first we have to acknowledge, right? And then what is the feminine? The feminine is flow. The feminine is magic. The feminine is ease, not striving. Striving is masculine. Doesn't mean we don't need that. But we have to honor the feminine flow magic that is our birthright. It is who we are. But we need to, for so many of us, is when we have to reclaim that. We have to awaken, which is why so much of my work is around awakening feminine wisdom. And then we can have both things operate together. We can work out, when am I in my magical, mystical feminine and when am I in my, linear, practical masculine, especially if you're a business owner. And I think that understanding and revering the feminine flow is, again, the antidote to it has to be hard to be worthy. And if I haven't attached the label of I worked really hard, then I'm not deserving of anything that comes with that because I haven't half killed myself to go and get it. And that is a unprogramming and a reprogramming of our feminine psyche.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head in the biggest way for me. And it's something that I'm gonna continue to keep reading through your book and doing the exercises in there. But I also really want to address, because I think that could be one of the core wounds for me, when you said undeserving, like without the working hard, therefore I don't deserve it. That I think is what resonates with me. And I had a marketing business and a financial management business, and I had no problems receiving money from my clients there. None at all, because it was this like practical actions that I was doing, and here's the proof of all the things. But then it's it's the energy work. It's all of the stuff that I do now that I love, that brings me so much joy, that I do really well as well, that I get really great results, that I have to figure out why I feel the need to justify that, and also receiving abundance for that part of it.
Yes. And this is so common amongst healers, anyone in the spiritual or healing space, is this perception, self-perception.
Yeah.
Well, if it's spiritual, I shouldn't make money from it. I should just do it. And that is about the value that you place on the work that you are doing. And that ownership and that inner critic work around that specifically would be really helpful for you.
Yeah, I love it. It's such an important thing. And I think that so many of my listeners are people who work in some spectrum in the spiritual or personal development realm. And sometimes that work does feel so freaking rewarding that it feels like you're ripping someone off by like
Yeah.
receiving because
Yes.
so much.
You do it anyway, right? Like I would coach and do all of these things and write books and do all the things anyway.
Yes.
But I think a really beautiful reframe that is really helpful is that we always look at things as an exchange, right? So if you are doing a healing, then what's the exchange? Well, the exchange is financial. Maybe not always, but if you're running a business, yeah, otherwise it's a hobby, right? So if you are, and that's how we need to think about our businesses in the personal development space, in the spiritual space, in the healing space, in the wellness space, so many spaces. I'm offering you this gift and magic, and in return, the exchange is you're going to pay me what I'm worth. Not a pittance over here in the corner, but this is,
Love that.
when we own that and when we see that, and that's really helpful for spiritual people because we get the concept of exchange.
Yeah.
That's when the penny can drop.
Yeah, that's massive. And that it's okay that you find that work enjoyable, easy, pleasurable, all those things as well. You don't have to.
I mean, that's yes.
Yeah.
Because we're also taught that work is to suffer and that we work our whole lives to get to retirement so that we can then enjoy ourselves.
Yeah.
That is the culture that we live in. And that I think that message and narrative is changing, and every generation it changes more. It changes more with Gen X. We're the problem because we're the original hustle culture. Gen Y changed it. Gen and millennials, Gen Z don't want any part of it. So it is getting better, but it is the energetic universe that we live and work in.
And I just want to quickly touch on something. I know that we're coming close to time, but I do want to quickly just talk about this with you. I want to talk about the other side of that as well, because as so much of my community are spiritually minded and we do lean into that spiritual aspect, equally, we do still need to pay attention to our P&Ls every month, and we do need to pay attention to what's actually going on in our funnels and customer journeys and things like that.
Yeah.
Where do you see like the intersection of like the balance almost between like business strategy and spirituality and this feminine power? How can we not forget about that very important aspect of the masculine or the doing that still needs to be done? And is there a way to do that with more feminine energy?
Yes. Oh, you just have the best questions. So yes, look, here's the bottom line. If you are in business, I don't care how spiritual you are, and I'm as spiritual as it gets. I'm doing a PhD in women's spirituality. You have to have your business in order. And that is being in your feminine power, right? Like if you are spending all of your time just over here in the magic and the healing and everything else, and your business isn't in order, and you're not in your full power as a woman and as a business owner. And we have to get that. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do it all yourself. Like if you are really not skilled and you really don't want to, get some support. Do an exchange with someone who's really good at that and you do healing on them, whatever it looks like. But you have to understand the basics. You have to understand your money. You have to understand, how do I get clients? What is my client acquisition costs? Like, you gotta know your numbers. And so often I think we are afraid to look at it. We don't want to know because we're like, oh, it's not going to be good, or we have an abundance scar and a wound, or we're in scarcity mindset, whatever it is. But yes, we have to do the basics. We have to understand, what are the basics of running our business? When is the time? And it could be in your feminine cycle time that you do that more masculine work, or it could be in the season of your business that you do that masculine, but it has to be done. And I think the reframe is that that's not going against yourself. It's coming more into your power as yourself. That you have this full, beautiful blend and balance stance, as you said before, of all the different aspects. And also, like, you don't have to love it. Right? Like, I mean, I run a big business, small team, but big, multi-million-dollar company. I hate talking to my accountant. Yeah, I like her. She's great. She's a business owner. But I don't want to be sitting there talking about P&Ls and expenses and da, 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 da. You don't have to love it. But you have to do it. And you want to be in business, right? You got to do it. So just accept that it's going to be 50-50. 50% of it's going to be amazing. Like when I'm creating, or I'm doing PhD research, or I'm writing a book, or I'm coaching women, amazing, in flow. Doing the logistics and the admin and the managing the team, not so much. It's part of it. So you got to accept the whole.
Yeah, I love this conversation so much because I think sometimes we just get sold just the flow. And then if you think about like duality and the balance between light, dark, male and female, like it was never designed for that. It was never designed one fully one way or one fully the other way. And I often think to myself, I do love numbers. I am an ex-accountant, so I nerd out on my spreadsheets and I find it really fun, but so many people don't. And I think that one thing for me that was helpful was almost understanding that taking control of your finance is such a liberation for your feminine energy. When we look at the history of women and how men basically control all of the finances for us, to go and be aware of what a balance sheet is and a P&L is, and know what your quarterly GST payments are well and truly before, it's way overdue and you're getting
and have a bank account where you paid your GST into your bank account. Yep.
And read the profit first and do all the things, right?
It is empowerment.
As soon as you do that, I think it is empowerment. I think it almost activates that beautiful extra element of your abundance flow as well. So many people can sit and meditate and, open up to abundance, but the universe loves action. And the moment that you take ownership on that and understand your numbers, I do feel like that's when the container starts to get bigger as well.
Yes.
And I have a lot of money flowing in if you don't know what the fuck you're going to do with it when it arrives,
and you won't. Like the truth is, if you want to be in an abundant business, then the container needs to be able to support that. Otherwise it will never come in. And this is all about, we can look at the masculine and feminine of it. We can also look at the chakras of it, right? So we're talking base chakras, and we're talking about grounding energy. And then when you're doing your healing or whatever it is, heart up. But for this, when we're taking care of business, we're talking bottom 3 chakras, and you better get that grounded.
That is amazing. I freaking love that. And I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that when I have to communicate that to anybody in the future, because I think that you have tapped into something there that explains it so well for people who are more magically inclined or spiritually inclined. So thank you for saying that. I know that that's going to provide so much value for everyone who crosses my path in the future, and anyone listening and anyone who works with you. So I could just pick your brain about that for a good couple of hours, but I've kept you for a long time. And I know you've got things to get to. So I will get you to maybe share, where can we dive into your incredible world? How can we obsess over you? Where can we find you, connect with you, and step into all of the amazing things you have to offer?
Oh, you're so beautiful. We could do 15 episodes, I'm sure, talking about all of this. So megandallacamina.com is the best place, my home. Online at Megan Dalla-Camina on not all social media. Some I'm not on, but Instagram, Meta, LinkedIn. Yeah, that's where I live, and for those who may be more corporate career inclined, womenrisingco.com, but you can get to everything from megandallacamina.com.
So
And there's
good.
a great, we've got a great free guide called Awakening Feminine Wisdom
Okay.
over on megandallacamina.com. It's at the top of the homepage. You can't miss it. Like, that could be really interesting given where this conversation's gone. That
Yes.
might be an interesting resource. And I do a Sunday note of encouragement every week at 4:00 on a Sunday. It's literally a 1-minute little read. So for anyone who's feeling like they need some love and encouragement right now, you can go get on that as well at Megan Dalla-Camina.
That is amazing. I will leave everything in the show notes as well. And just before you go, one question that I ask all of my guests: with all of the amazing, incredible life experience that you've had so far, what is the one thing that you know to be true so far?
That you know the answer, that I know the answer, that I know our truth lies within us. Our truth lies within us, especially as women. And we just have to be brave enough to listen and then to trust.
Oh,
Because
I love that.
we have all of it inside of us.
You are so amazing. Thank you so much for all your time, for your energy, and for being such an incredible example of how we can really step into this feminine aspect of ourselves, but still achieve all of the amazing things that we want to achieve as ambitious women too.
Thank you so much.